This right here is the all-new Yamaha Tenere 700, a very hyped motorcycle, mainly due to the time it's taken Yamaha to bring this bike to market, but it's finally here in Australia. And if you've been watching the channel, you know that I'm in the market for a mid-size adventure bike to join my stable. The Tenere is perfectly situated in that particular criteria. It is a mid-size bike, it's a 690cc motorcycle. It uses the MT-07 CP2 engine, which is really nice. It's got this beautiful, smooth low-end torque, which is really good for just cruising. It actually feels just buttery smooth to ride. What's really appealing about this bike for adventure riders is just the weight of the bike. This bike comes at 205 kilograms with fuel. Now, the only caveat there is the fuel is slightly below the competition. It's a 16-litre fuel tank compared to the 20 litres that the KTM 790 has, for example. But either way, there's no denying that this is the lightest motorcycle in the adventure category. It also comes with a few other little key features or lack of features that really make this bike stand out. When I talk about lack of features, really what we're talking about is the lack of an electronic system on this motorcycle. All it has is ABS, and that's able to be turned on and off. Apart from that, there are no ride modes, there's no traction control. It's simply you, the throttle, the clutch, the brakes. And that's really appealing to a lot of adventure riders. And for me, coming from a Harley, which has none of that fancy electronics as well, it's definitely something that I wouldn't feel like I'm missing out necessarily. The bike's really striking. I think in particular, this front end is something that really makes the bike stand out with that Dakar style windshield and headlight and front fairing. It really looks kind of mean and menacing and ready to hit the off-road. Now, on my test ride today, unfortunately, I can't take this bike off-road, which is an absolute real shame because, well, I was able to take the 790 Adventure R off-road from KTM and I had an absolute blast. In fact, being able to have so much fun off-road is a really persuading point for me when choosing my next motorcycle. What I need for my bike is a bike that can get me to the off-road and then absolutely hammer it through the trails. That's really what I'm looking for. So I will happily forego some comfort on the street or on the highway in order to have a more fun experience off-road. And unfortunately, I'm just not gonna be able to test that out today. I've been able to ride up along some grass banks and jump off some curbs to try and get an idea of the suspension at least. And it's really just not it's obviously just not giving me a good indicator of what this bike would be like. What I can say is though, in terms of ergonomics, if I jump on the bike, is that it is quite tall. I'm 6 foot, this is the standard seat, no lowering kit, and I'm slightly on the balls of my feet. I can flat foot, as you can see here, but balls of my feet is where I'm comfortable. That's kind of a nice, comfortable position for me. I don't want to be flat footing on an adventure bike. I want it to be just slightly tall, so it's got lots and lots of ground clearance for when you're riding off-road. One thing that's not so favorable for me is that this gas tank is very classically adventure bike-like in that it sits quite high up. Now, it isn't as high as, say, the Triumph Tigers or the BMW GS, but after riding the KTM 790 and having those saddlebag fuel tanks sitting nice and low, this definitely does feel a little bit intrusive, and it just makes the bike feel bigger and taller than it really needs to be. But saying that, the weight does feel very well balanced and it does feel very light. The bike leans really nicely into the turn. It completely just dips in and finds grip and pulls through those corners with that beautiful low-end torque from the engine, which is really, really nice. In contrast, the KTM felt like you needed to be higher in the RPMs and really kind of aggressively riding to get the most out of that engine. Now, that could be a good thing or a bad thing depending on your riding style. Again, for me, if I was going to be riding this bike aggressively off-road, maybe I lean towards more that KTM style of power delivery. But that being said, just cruising around the streets right now, I'm really enjoying just that low-end torque of the Tenere 700. The brakes feel really good. They're a little bit soft on the first engagement. This is an off-road design bike. You want it to be a little bit softer on first tug, but as you pull in on that brake, they really start to clamp down. I think what makes this bike just a really great package is obviously its price point at 17,000 Australian dollars. It puts it at the lowest price out of the competition. You do lose out some of those features. Like I said, there's no electronics package, there's no traction control, there's no ride modes. There's also no tubeless tires, so these are tube tires. Now that could be a deciding factor for some of you as well. What I was hoping to learn more about this test ride was really the suspension. It seems to be the biggest concern of this bike from other reviews, from riders who've been able to take this off-road. And unfortunately, it looks like I'm just not going to be able to really push that suspension and see how it performs. And that's a real shame because first and foremost, the bike that I'm looking to purchase is going to be for off-road riding. And it's going to be hard for me to make a decision on this bike if I can't actually test ride it off-road first. But overall, I like how light this bike feels. I like the smooth delivery of the engine, really beautiful low-end torque, and I really like the balance and flickability of the bike as well. If only I could just know what it's like through the dirt.